Alright, so this is game 3 of July 1st, 2015. Um, it's basically the last game we played, and I'm going to be going over a few key points, especially our lack of ward coverage, which includes our poor trinket usage and not understanding our warding zones, our correct usage of roles in team fights, especially in the top and the jungle, the positioning of Syndra in the mid lane during team fights, the relevance of our jungle as the beyond the very early game, and other minor points I like to bring up are top lane champ pool, and as far as Zac goes, or really any AP tank jungler, I will have a link down below in the description that will link to a much more optimized mastery build and room build, so that generally it's going to be easier to be more relevant in an early game while also being more relevant in the mid to late game. Alright, so number one thing, and this is a small issue, but it's just something to watch out for. If you're playing Callista, I, as Alistair, am going to try to get that early ward out, because we always have to be careful of the early invade. The 5-man, 4-man stack that's become more popular. So it's really important to get ward coverage on this bush, and preferably down here, just to be safe against the cheese. So I'm going to rush straight off the pad. The jungler, and I'm always going to ward around here if I can. The jungler should rush off the pad and ward around here, while the top laner or mid laner should rush off the pad and either ward here or here immediately. Now, right after I rush back, notice I'll be done warding at about 45 seconds. I'm gonna walk back. You don't have to rush the binding process. There's no reason to bind here, because if the invade is coming, then we're gonna get fucked. We're automatically giving up first blood. I'm always gonna walk back to about here. We're here, just past the bush, so that we have coverage for any sort of invades and aggressive plays, and then you can bind me when I get behind the bush, so that we have time and the vision advantage to respond if something does go bad while the binding is going on. There's no reason to rush that bind that early. Secondly is at a minute 55 or so. Alright, so as you're leaving here, as you're leaving the blue buff, first of all, you can leave at about a minute 40. If they're not showing on this ward for invade, and they haven't shown any sort of need to invade, there's no reason to stay here all the way till 155, because potentially you're going to be giving up minion control. The smart thing to do actually would be to come here just outside of tower range at about a minute 40, stand here before the minions meet up, and have all these minions aggro on you. The second they aggro on you, you walk back towards this bush, and as your minions meet in the top lane, these guys will be aggroed on you, so your minions will meet a little bit earlier on or further down the lane. But that way, with 6 minions aggroed on you, you run into the bush, and then all 6 minions will de-aggro, and because of how minion targeting works, they'll target down 1 minion at a time, while your minions are attacking all of them, which means that you will get an automatic push slowly in your direction if you're trying to take minion control. This will usually cost you about 1 potion, but it could easily be worthwhile, depending on how you want your lane to go. Either way, no matter how your lane is going, there's no reason to drop a ward here at 155. Either drop a ward here at 45 seconds so it's back up at 245, or just leave. At the very latest, you want to hit that ward at 1 minute 30. because you need time for your ward to come back up so you can ward top lane at between 3 minutes 40 and 3:55, which I will get to when we get there. Alright, so 3 minutes 40 is coming up, and we're looking at warding zones basically. At 3 minutes 40, you can expect the first gank to start coming in pretty soon. A normal buy will involve the jungler going back and then coming back to lanes at about 4 minutes. So you want to get a ward in at between 340 to 350. Your preliminary zone coverage should usually be bot lane will ward the river. Jungler will ward the bottom side river, this tiny little bush here. Mid lane will use his ward right now to ward the top side, whether it be this river bush, the tiny bush, or the banana bush on red side, depending on how far you pushed up, how much wave control you have, and everything else. And top lane should at the very least be warding river bush or tri-bush, depending on how far you're being pushed up. Of course, this is for the blue side. On the purple side, mid lane would ward here, here, or here, depending on coverage. And if we're on the purple side, top lane would obviously just ward the river. But yeah, we have to get our ward timings down. Right now, our ward timings are pretty awful. You know, we're coming up on 3 minutes 52. The time that you can almost guarantee the first gank is coming in for most normal jungle clears, and mid lane has no wards at all. Like your ward is literally dying right now in the most vulnerable time while you're pushed up, and top lanes is just coming back because of that weird ward timing at the blue buff at 155. So you're leaving yourselves very vulnerable, which will pay off when Wukong gets a kill at 420. Now mid lane got first blood, you know, that's fine. Good play from the Syndra. And good, you know, just mechanical outplays. But we still got to focus on our strategic plays. Now, because of the lack of ward coverage in the top side and the weird ward timing, you're going to get ganked here. And the issue with getting ganked here, I mean, it's fine. You know, shit happens and you're going to die. But there's a small mechanical misplay here. Because you had literally just used your Q to go in on Nasus, you know your Q is on cooldown. And takes a second to reset. But you had just used your Q to go on a Nasus, and your Q is going to be on cooldown. Right here. And that's when Wukong shows up. If you don't have a way to cleanse off the Wither, and you're this far up in lane, there's no reason blowing your flash right now, because you're not going to survive this gank. So, you know at the end of the day, you're going to be handing off that 450 gold. There's no reason to also give up a summoner spell on top of that, because there is a 0% chance you would have survived, whether you flashed or not. So, you know, just be smarter with your usage of your summoner spells. Another thing that comes back to our strategic map control and ward coverage comes down to between 7 minutes 30 and 11:20. Alright. Starting at 7 minutes 30, there are everybody's trinkets are on cooldown. And this shows just the absolute lack of any sort of control that we have on this map. Our only vision is here, which is, I mean, we're not playing against a team that's very good. So honestly, their word coverage and map control is fucking awful, but that doesn't excuse the fact that our word coverage and map control is just as bad. And this is not like, oh man, this is not just a matter of forgetting your word timings. This is a matter of just not warding, period. Alright, from 7 minutes 30 to 11 minutes 20, not a single trinket ward is used by mid, top lane, or jungle. And I mean, that's pretty bad. Every single ward on the map right now, this pink, blue, or green, and green, are being put down by me, Alistair, and then the one by Garen. This ward right here, which is the basic, very, very basic area that the jungler has to control with his ward coverage and vision coverage, lasts from 10 minutes 44 to 16:30. And it doesn't die until Syndra comes down, sees it, and then kills it. Like, just the amount of map control that we're losing is not worthwhile compared to the map pressure that we're building on bot lane. Where was I? Yes. Alright, so as we enter the mid game, starting at about level 6, when everyone starts hitting level 6, preferably at about 8-9 minutes, the warding zones change. You know, early game ward zones are here and here for bot, here for jungler, here for mid laner, and here for top laner. As we move into the mid game, especially now that especially the top laner has money, there's no reason, especially on the blue side, not to ward their tri-bush. So you have a green ward here, which is great, but you're also level 9, you have a 2-minute ward that you can have 100% uptime on in the tri-bush. So starting in the mid game, top lane's responsibility is river and tri-bush. Mid lane's responsibility doesn't really change. Depending on how far you're pushed and what side you're on, it's going to be this bush, here, here, or here. And it changes for jungle. Early game is always here, but as the game moves forward, you're going to want either ward coverage on their deeper into their jungle on their side, either here or here, or if you don't feel safe getting down in there to put wards, here, just to cover the blue buff and the grump area. While bottom lane's coverage, you know, stays fairly the same. Tri-bush, river bush, and if at all possible, this tri-bush. So just keep that in mind. We have to remember what your role in a ward game is and start playing that game. Because right now, we are just ignoring, like, the entire strategic part of this game. And we are paying pretty hard for it. Furthermore, at 16 minutes, there's a small misplay. Because of our lack of vision coverage, there's no reason to follow the bar tunnel. Bar tunnel is always a trap. Like, there's nothing good that comes from going in here. You got off fairly lucky, but and it definitely could have been worse, and it definitely has turned out to be worse for us before. You just, unless you have vision and you can guarantee some sort of play, there's no reason to follow a bar tunnel. At 1920, okay, so at about 19 minutes, we're trying to push down the bot tower with Callista and I, and this is honestly just a misplay from our part. We see Katarina and Wukong walk through the river into their jungle and probably into their tri-bush. And we disrespect how fast it takes Bard to get back onto the map. So we're pushing up here, and we see Katarina leave, but we don't see Wukong leave. And we just absolutely forget how fast Bard can move around the map with, and it's just a bad judgment call. Either Callista or I should have called it off, because there is honestly not much that could be had from aggressing on this tower with this small number of minions against the Caitlyn. Like it didn't really make, in retrospect, it doesn't make that much sense anyways to be there. And that, you know, that gives up 2 kills, which isn't great. Actually, that gives up 1 kill, I remember, because Brian teleports in. But I think Brian teleporting in gives up another kill. Our first big team fight comes in at 23:10. And this is where the roll coverage and the usage of our frontline assets becomes an issue. So, and this is why I propose we should go back to our original plan of the 2-2-1. Jungler with mid laner, support with ADC, leave the top lane to flank. There's no reason to, especially with the champion pool that we have right now, in Garen, you know, in our team comp, there's no reason for us to play it any other way, because Garen is not going to peel. Garen's not going to give you the kind of zone control, defensive zone control that you're going to want. Garen's very much an offensively minded champion, and this is shown here as we just play our roles incorrectly. This is a winnable fight. We're not down that far, and honestly, we have much better positioning on the map than they do. They're fairly split. Caitlyn is very off by herself, completely separated. And the question now becomes, why does Zac come up here to flank? There's no reason to send Zac to flank, because Zac doesn't bring much to the flank compared to Garen. Garen is much tankier at this point, does a lot more damage with the Black Cleaver, and just generally has a lot more gold, which is something I'll get to at the very end of this. There's just no reason to have Garen back here, because Garen's not going to provide any CC or peel, and to have Zac over here, because Zac needs setup time. Zac's elastic slingshot can take almost, you know, over a second to go through the animation and charge up fully, worst case scenario. So putting Zac on the flank and having Zac move up here is the absolute wrong move, and that's one of the first things that loses us this fight. We have our only source of crowd control here, basically zoning out Nasus, which is a priority target, I'll admit, but doing nothing. You lose half your hit points just by trying before the fight even starts. And unlike Garen, you're not even doing damage while zoning out or taking the attention of Nasus. So you jump in and you immediately die. Like, there was absolutely no impact on the fight. Whereas we're leaving Garen back here to try to help peel for the mid laner, which obviously doesn't work because Garen has no forms of crowd control at all. Like, the only peel he can do is through damage, and Garen's never going to have that kind of burst damage where he is going to be a scary enough threat that he is actually going to dissuade dives and just burst damage. Furthermore, I understand that Syndra is a mid-range champion, but Syndra still has a pretty decent range on all of her abilities. Especially, the only thing that is honestly relatively short-ranged is her W. Because of the mobility and the ability to move while casting all your spells. None of your spells lock you into an animation. There's no reason to be this close. There's no reason to be walking up literally in melee range with the front line. You should be standing back here near Callista, preferably on the other side of the river, creating a buffer zone of space so that their AoE wombo, that includes Wukong and Katarina, cannot one-shot both of you at the same time. There's no reason to play this far up this aggressively, because given the right play and the right fights, we should not be... Fights last for a long time in this meta because of how tanky everyone is. This fight starts off at 23:10 or so, and I want to say it lasts for over 30 seconds. So taking a couple extra seconds sitting back here trying to figure out how that fight's unfolding before you drop down all your burst is perfectly fine. You know, losing one spell rotation in a 30-second fight is not a big deal. But being dead, you know, halfway into it is a much bigger deal. So just watch your positioning and play more conservatively and let the frontliners frontline. There's no reason to be, you know, to pretend you're a frontliner on really any AP champion unless you're playing like Lissandra or someone else really designed for it. But yeah, basically what happens here is Zac gets completely destroyed without having any impact on the fight or doing anything at all. Syndra gets completely destroyed and made essentially combat ineffective before the fight even starts. So now it's very much a 3v5, and not only a 3v5, but we're not using our champions to the best of their abilities. If instead we had Garen come up top for a flank and Zac stay back here with the moving with the Syndra here, this fight would have turned out a lot better for us. But again, we're just not using our assets correctly. Another issue comes up at about 26:45. Here we go. Okay, so Syndra has... Again, I know it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse, but Syndra has a decent amount of range at all her abilities. 800 range on Dark Sphere. Force of Will is about 925. Unless it's rank 5, then it's 950, I believe. And Scatter the Weak is 700, but obviously it's 700 plus another stun path where it'll push the ball up to another 700 units or so. 600 actually, because the ball has its own hitbox. So what you're looking at is the minimum range you should be from Nasus is 800 units. This right now is roughly 250. There's no reason to be in melee range here. Furthermore, if you miss your scatter of the week, there's no reason to keep on chasing because we're not going to kill Nasus. We know that at this point. Nasus is pretty damn tanky. If you're not going to one-shot him, there's no reason to keep on chasing the guy until the rest of the team gets there. Right now, this is what I meant by the solo queue mentality last night I was talking about, where we're just sort of we're assuming every fight is like this 1v1 or 2v1 weird catch-out situation when you're playing 5's queue, because everyone's coordinated and on calls and on the same team and, you know, working together, you have to assume every fight's a 5v5 unless known otherwise. So there's no reason to play aggressive like that and just keep on chasing. And there's no reason to ult Nasus because that's not a kill. You know, dropping that OT and dropping all that stuff. It's just not an effective usage of resources, basically. So just be smarter about your target prioritization and your positioning. You know, you sort of have to change that mindset from playing solo queue where everyone's disorganized and you can take advantage of mistakes and mispositioning, and you can sort of assume that everyone's playing their own game by themselves on different parts of the map. You have to realize that with 5's queue, you know, just sort of get used to the idea that everyone's on the same team, everyone's on the same call, they're all communicating. So at any given time, if they are not on the map, you have to assume that they are all together. But yeah, there's just a lot of it, like I said, for everybody on the team, it's just getting used to playing as a 5's team and getting used to the position you're playing now. Because, you know, we've had a lot of role swaps and it's going to take some time to get used to it. You know, there's always going to be teething problems as we get used to everything. One of the things that I wasn't able to really get into in this game is the usage of our jungle. Alright, so Zach needs to, the jungler needs to be smarter about time being spent and generally usage of abilities and jungle farm, because as of right now, if our top laner is not, because our top laner doesn't necessarily have the champion pool as of right now to be the primary frontliner, the jungler is going to have to worry about being a primary frontliner, and the jungler is just falling way too far behind on gold. This game, you were just under 7,000 gold behind. Yeah, 7,000 gold behind. The game before that, in the first game of July 1st, you were just under 6,000 gold behind. And the second game, which we won, and our whole team was 10,000 gold up, you were still behind the enemy jungler in gold. Like, that's what's really fucking us. Even if we do play these team fights right, that's going to fuck us real hard, real badly. Because we're just, you're not getting enough money and you're not scaling, and you're not going to be that front line. That's why we, even in that game, the first game, where things felt okay, we just kept on losing our fights because we kept on losing. We don't have the money to fight. Our carries are staying competitive in gold. Our carries are staying competitive in damage. Now we just need the jungler and the top laner to step up as a front line and to be more effective in doing that, because we are getting our asses handed to us with our lack of scaling and inefficient use of gold and inefficient getting of gold. There's no reason that even when we are 10,000 gold ahead, that our jungler should be more at a lower gold amount than the enemy jungler, or that the support should have more money than the jungler. So Obviously, I'm not able to analyze your jungle route and stuff. This was a really weird game, especially the early game, but just keep that in mind and keep on changing up your routes and practicing because you definitely need to scale. Right now, we are getting completely demolished in every way possible. The vast majority of this gold difference, for example, is the jungler, you know, right now. And that's going to be true. That's true of all of our games. We're just not finding even the opportunities where we have to fight. We're not fighting the fights that we can take because we can't take any fights just because we don't have any front line. Period. So this one has been relatively short. It's quick, and it's been pretty basic. We'll see how things go tomorrow on Friday and see what else we need to work on. But these are the very basics that people have to really start getting used to. Let the top laner flank. Jungle, stay with the mid laner. Mid laner, watch your positioning. You don't have to play nearly as aggressive. Fights draw up for a long time. And if you self zone yourself for a couple seconds just so you can see how the fight's progressing and get a better position so that you can do more reliable damage over time, it's worth it. You don't have to feel like you have to hard carry the fight instantly and just 100-0 everything at the beginning. Remember our ward coverage rules. Remember our ward coverage zones. Remember how to extend the ward coverage as the mid game comes. Late game, obviously, it is always going to be different, so we're going to have to play that by ear. We're going to have to change our word coverage in the late game by ear. But early to mid game, stick to the script so that we have better map control. Map control will bring us a much stronger early game. That should also leave the jungler to some freedom to not gank as much. So while still having us win our lanes, so that our jungler doesn't fall off nearly as hard, because our jungler is pretty much completely useless from about level 8 onwards, just because of the huge gold differential.